thing I wanted to say about Huntsville
Sure.
is I think one thing I really like about Huntsville, not only are the voters or the people who are engaged seemingly a lot more pragmatic, they seem less like tribal and ideology poisoned. And there's this like, if you try to talk about like solutions that do it all, increase economic growth and benefit the environment and help people who are needy and, help alleviate racial segregation, blah, blah, blah. When you talk about economic growth, that's like coded right in San Francisco and it's like kind of bad. And that's not the case in Huntsville. And so I really, really like that because I think growing the economy is good. I think, innovation and shared prosperity are helpful. I think like decreasing global poverty is a good thing. And so I appreciate that people in Huntsville seem to be more like on the same page about that.
Do you think some of that, in the things I've learned from guests, number one, I always hear Huntsville's very inclusive, right? I had guests on who said, hey, you can't run for mayor in other parts of Alabama if your family wasn't like from that area, right? Or your grandpa wasn't on the Mardi Gras committee or whatever. Like, forget about it. So kind of only in Huntsville, Mayor Battle's from Birmingham and Paul Finley, Madison's from Kentucky. And it's to a certain degree, hey, we'll take your ideas. Whoever you are, if you want to get involved, roll up your sleeves, help us. And then the other thing I wonder is if there's people like me, us, where you've kind of mid-career and you move back. And in our case, a lot of us are coming from primary markets. We're coming into this secondary market. I think we're in the 110th largest city. I learned that from when I interviewed the zoo because we're a secondary market. And we're growing, but all these ideas are coming in because we all came from somewhere where, hey, we had this and we had that. How come we don't have that here? Well, it's a matter of time. I wonder if that's something, even with nonprofits. There's people like me who I spent 20 years as a commuter, never had the time or energy to do anything civic by the time I got home because I was shot. 2 hours on the road, 8 or 10 hours in the office. The last thing I really wanted to do was go to a board meeting or something for a nonprofit. You know what I mean? And now I feel like to some degree, you get time back in your life. And do you see that somewhat too of the people? I mean, I guess it's one thing if people have been here, if they've been from Harvest, they never left. Does that help at all and contribute to just kind of fresh ideas or non-ideology based and hey, open to ideas because this worked in Chicago or whatever?
Yeah, I think if you're like find the right anathema, you're probably not going to move to Huntsville, Alabama. And I think that if you find the left anathema, you also may not want to live in Huntsville, Alabama. You know what I mean? Like, it is a city and it's a growing city. So I think that is something Huntsville really has going for it is, again, it doesn't seem as like we're a purpleizing state. City. So I think that's a huge benefit that Huntsville has. I think, anytime you have people who, can be a little more cosmopolitan because they have lived other places, but aren't necessarily like coastal liberal elites and like dyed in the wool, super progressive. I think that can lead to good outcomes. And I don't know, I just see a sense of like, I don't know if I would use the term inclusive though. I think that does totally track, but I think to me, like the fact that Battle got elected and keeps getting elected comes down to pragmatism. I think when I hear people talk about Battle, it's just like, he's doing a good job, Whereas I think a lot of places it's like he says the right things or he has the right label or he's the right party or he is from the right family.
Yeah.
Here it just seems to be like he's making good choices, like the policy's good. And I look at just in San Francisco, it's like there was this huge battle over like trash cans and every trash can was like $1 million because of the way the contracting was working out and
union.
Yeah, like unions and the contracts and all that. And here, and like the roads were always a mess, and the trash was not picked up, and just needles and poop everywhere. And it's like, we're literally the richest city in the country, and we can't like pay people to pick up poop and needles. Come on. And I come to Huntsville, and it's just like well run. It's a well run city. Like the services happen, and they seem to happen at a reasonable, rate as far as how much they cost. And obviously, I'm sure there's tons of stuff that goes wrong, but just as someone who's just a person getting around, it just seems to be a much better run city, which is really nice.
Well, I have an I'm going to tell you something real quick, and then I got a question. But I used to mow lawns in Great Falls, Virginia. So these homes were huge. If it was not old money, like people who happened to have this house a long time ago, it was mostly diplomats, right? So, and a lot of from like Saudi Arabia. And so here's this house. We come up to this house. I'm like, just had graduated high school, mowing lawns with this guy, and these huge mowers. And this driveway had like 5 cars. Every kid had their own chauffeur, right? And a beautiful home until you get to the backyard. And it was a landfill. It was a mountain of trash. And I'm like asking the guy, like, what do we do? He's like, just mow around it. And every week, it just became more and more. I'm like, so these people have 5 drivers, not even their personal vehicles, right? This is just this fleet of the thing they hire out, one for every kid, private school, whatever, all this money, culturally, whatever, the backyard, like, you can put that on the curb, or take it somewhere, but nope, just backyard. And it smelled bad. And it's just weird thing, right? Where you're kind of exposed to just dirty third world country-ish, trash, and then $2 million house.
That's wild.
It was wild. When it comes to, there's a lot of projects going on in the city. I think the city's $331 million budget was what was passed. All kinds of different economic development things. Is there people that you've interacted with to say, hey, you know what, Cathy, this is noble. Public housing is definitely important, but we just have too many other things. Money is just tied up in too many other projects. Or the funding is just not going to be there for a while.
No. I mean, but I'm only talking to people who, unfortunately, thus far, I'm only talking to people who like show up to my happy hours, which is a certain kind of person. Mm-hmm. People who I'm reaching out to, which is a certain kind of person. Mostly people who are like already working in homelessness or something related. Yeah. So no, I haven't encountered that kind of person. What I've encountered is like, so I post to Reddit, to the Huntsville subreddit, and there's been a lot of pushback there.
Really?
Oh yeah. A lot of pushback there.
Is that expected though with the Reddit crowd? Because they tore me up too. I tried to post a podcast and I was like, never again. These people like got those keyboard people they assassinated me in one evening. I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. I have a pretty negative stereotype of like a Reddit user, and so far but at the same time, I keep doing it because when I would show up to my happy hours, I'm like, how did you find out about the happy hour? Reddit. That was the biggest source of people actually showing up. So there's a huge contingent that just wants to be mean online, but there are also people who like really want to like be part of some kind of a solution, or at least learn and see if this could be a solution. So, yeah.
Can we talk about the human side of it for a bit?
Please.
And I'm not gonna pull it up on my machine. I think I wrote them down. Hopefully, I don't need glasses. But have you heard of CAFU?
I don't know.
Hold on, maybe I'll just pull it up real quick. It's cold, and let's see. Well, that's AI. I've got something for you, Rob, to chime in on later, maybe. It's CAUF. Let's see. It's some interesting articles. But anyway, I'm going to read here. This is the. I might have to read it from my Google Doc because I can't read my handwriting. Here we go. It's really small. Why they refuse help. Here's why. No. We're going to start with why to choose. I know it's really small. Why to choose to be homeless. Number 1, freedom from bills. Number 2, freedom from work. Freedom to explore. Get away from family. freedom from neighbors, freedom from home maintenance, live in nature, an opportunity to save money, more time to pursue goals. I wasn't sure what I felt about that list. That, you know, there's some paragraphs that goes into some more detail, but in what you know about people's, when it is a choice, I think that's probably a very small percentage of those that are homeless where it's a choice. There are, and I think there's some that will tell you, I like living out here. I like it. I don't want to be housed. I don't want to go to a shelter. I don't, you know, for whatever reason, but that has to be a very small percentage, I would imagine. Most I think are from disability, loss of job, divorce, you know, some sort of catastrophic event that puts you into homelessness after you either have options with your family or you don't. Maybe you've exhausted all other things, but to what degree do you know, or have you interacted with people to get a feel for those that choose to? Are they making a conscious choice to be homeless? If that's a fair characterization.
I think it's such an interesting question because what does it mean to choose? And I think that the one thing that I want to stress, and this is something I want everyone to understand, and that is the empirical evidence is very, very clear and very strong that the number one cause of homelessness is unaffordable housing, insufficient unaffordable housing. People are homeless because there aren't enough homes. And the people, this mostly comes from a bunch of places, but I just read a book called Homelessness is a Housing Problem. And they use an analogy that I think is really apt. And that is, imagine a game of musical chairs. Mm-hmm. And one person who's playing has a broken leg. All right, so you're playing musical chairs. Everybody gets a chair. They all get up. You take a chair away. You play. The person with a broken leg is probably going to be left standing. But why don't we focus on the fact that there aren't enough chairs, okay. Right? And so I think the whole idea of choice needs to be considered in context. Mm-hmm. Something that I've written and spoken about a lot is sex work, right? And it's like people sometimes are forced into sex work, so they're trafficked, they're sex slaves. It's not work if you're forced into it. Mm-hmm. A lot of people choose it, but a lot of people choose it from a very constrained set of options. They need work that is flexible. Maybe they're disabled. A lot of them are neurodivergent. A lot of them are parents. You know, there are all kinds of things, physical, mental disabilities that make it difficult for them to, you know, do a 9-to-5 or work for a low wage, long hours, or whatever. So, yeah, some people choose homelessness, but if all of the shelters in their area won't let them be with their partner, but, you know, they have a history of sexual violence, which is common, and they don't feel safe in shelters without their partner, is that a choice? Like, yes, but it's a very constrained choice. And so I don't believe very many people are choosing homelessness out of a plethora of attractive options. Yeah. And so the question of are people choosing homelessness is missing the point. The point is, why is homelessness an attractive option to so many people, or a tolerable option, or the option? Why don't we give more people more options so they're not choosing homelessness? Why don't we make sure that housing is affordable to people on a widespread basis? Why have we as a society decided you can either live in a perfectly code compliant housing unit that has a bathroom for every person and, you know, certain number of steps and all these requirements, or a tent, but nothing else is legal? That's why we have homelessness. Yeah. Not because people are just, I don't want to pay bills. That's a victim blaming framing.
Or do they And the reason they can't, because there's other mandatory bills too, right, on top of rent.
Sure.
That makes that
Healthcare
difficult.
is very expensive. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of people who are homeless go in with health problems, and then homelessness exacerbates those health problems. You know, just diabetes and hypertension, which homelessness exacerbates, are extremely expensive conditions to manage and live with.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of problems, but the main problem is housing is too expensive.
Yeah.
And that's why when you compare cities, there's a very direct correlation between how high are average rents and how low are residential vacancy rates and what's the homelessness rate.
I think I don't know if you've looked at it yet, but I think Vienna, Austria, like has solved it. Them and maybe one city in Finland, because they've built the housing. I don't know if you've looked into that yet.
Yeah, I think there are some problems with that. Like I said, it's not possible. Like, we don't have the political will to build enough public housing that conforms to zoning and building codes in any U.S. city to make a dent in our homelessness rate, because it's too expensive. Like, it's public housing is not going to solve the homelessness problem or the housing crisis. And the housing crisis impacts way more than just people who are homeless.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think I saw a stat, 150 million people worldwide, and it was like 1 or 2% of the entire world's population are homeless, which is crazy when you start seeing numbers like that. You know, I was trying to like, are these people like being serious? Or like, why they refuse help? They view shelters as dangerous places. They feel inundated with religion and substance abuse and mental health counseling with them. And that, you know, in fairness, like Downtown Rescue Mission, right? It's a faith-based thing. I know you mentioned that or asked Keith kind of in a questioning, hey, you know, is that required? If you're Muslim, can you still go to a Christian facility? They cannot bring their pets into the shelter. They refuse to comply with mandatory drug treatment requirements. They do not like shelter rules. They feel like shelter workers treat them like children. They know that many homeless shelters have bed bugs or body lice. They feel stressed and crammed when in a shelter, and they enjoy a sense of community that people in the street share. I don't know. These are interesting things. This may have been written in Canada, but maybe there's a difference of, you know, if you were to survey different homeless people in different cities, But, you know, it certainly makes me think when I come across these supposed responses, right, from someone who might be homeless.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting, but it's also kind of neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Because shelters are not a long-term solution to homelessness. Shelters are definitionally an interim solution. Mm-hmm. And what we have in the United States and growing cities is long-term chronic homelessness. And so whether people are in shelters or on the street, in Huntsville at least, there's not a wait list for shelters as far as I know. However, what Keith was saying was that, like, if you're on the sex offender registry, you
can't go.
There's no shelter in any area around here that will take you. You have to be outside. So, and
I think you guys talked about some wild scenario where some guy, they ended up getting married, but when they were teenagers, they had some sort of sexual thing, and he ended up being on the list, and now, like, forever, it never gets removed.
Yes.
Even though they're married.
Yeah. I mean, you can get on the sex offender registry for, you know, if someone underage sends you a naked picture of themselves. You can get on the sex offender registry for urinating in public. You can get on the sex offender registry for all kinds of things that absolutely do not indicate that you're any danger to anyone else.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's kind of neither here nor there. The solution to homelessness in the long term is housing. And until we build sufficient housing, like, we're going to have a homelessness problem. And it would be great if we had enough shelters for everyone in the interim. And that's a fine goal. But at the end of the day, that's not where my focus is. My focus is on, like, we have created homelessness through our policy choices, and we can solve homelessness through our policy choices. And so rather than trying to make homelessness, like, less punitive, which, you know, I think that's something that, like, Downtown Rescue Mission and Love Huntsville are working on, and I think that's awesome. Like, we should not criminalize homelessness. People should not be forced to sleep outdoors. But at the end of the day, my goal is not to make homelessness more comfortable. It's to eliminate it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in talking with First Stop in that episode, just the fact that there's like the shower up service and that the people homeless can use their address as a physical address, so if you can go to work, fill out an application, have a home address, take a shower before you go and feel like a human, right? And perform a job and hopefully earn enough money to break out.
Yeah.
And break the cycle.
Well, and I agree with like the housing first concept, which is that you can't be mentally well if you don't have a home. Like, homelessness is crazy making, and it makes mental health and physical health deteriorate, like empirically shown. Like, it deteriorates people's brains and bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to house people before you can help them in any other way. Totally agree with that. I just disagree with the concept that we're going to be able to build enough public housing in accordance with zoning and building codes to actually house every person who needs it. Like, that's just not feasible.
That has to change first.
Right.
And it's doable, right?
Easily. Absolutely. Yeah. It's easily done once stakeholders are on board and you get the politics out of the way, which is the hard part.
I think Columbus, Ohio, and Salt Lake City have done tremendous with that, and they're much larger than we are. So it's, I think Salt Lake's 91% decrease in homelessness since like over a 10-year span.
So none of the cities have decreased net homelessness, is my understanding. So a lot of the Housing First programs, they will have really exciting success rates. And this is from a lit review, basically, that my friend Mike Tanner, he's a policy analyst, and he's actually coming to speak to the New Liberals in November. So set your calendars to stun and come talk to him.
What day is that in November?
It's the second Thursday in November. I don't remember what number day that is.
That's that's going to be the 9th, right? Because Thanksgiving's the 23rd.
Hold on,
I'm doing my math right here.
No, it's the 16th. It's the 16th.
Oh,
16th. Yes. So that would be the 3rd. Yeah. Anyway, 16th of November, 6 p.m. Mad Malts, come out and check us out. 6 to 8. So anyway, but he was looking at Housing First programs, and there's a really high success rate in the first few years for the people who are very motivated. So these are the participants in Housing First who are motivated within the first few years. But if you look at all participants, by the 10-year mark, the majority of them have experienced homelessness again.
Really?
Yes. Because you can't solve homelessness without a lot more homes. And there's no Housing First program that has vastly increased the total stock of housing. The average cost of housing is not going down. And these people's incomes are not going up.
Yeah.
And all the challenges, associated with that, they can get help for them. But if they can't afford housing, they can't afford housing. And again, there's just, not only is public housing more expensive to build than market rate housing, but it's all more expensive, again, due to regulations. And permanent supportive housing is even more expensive than plain public housing. So Housing First can actually have cause a net reduction in the number of units that a city builds, because every unit is more expensive because of the supportive part. So it's not a solution, at least as implemented. Like, it can't solve the problem. It's not possible.
Right. I was going to mention, have you read up on they're using machine learning to help prevent people before they become homeless?
So that's a really good idea, because homelessness is very expensive for cities. It is far more expensive for a city to deal with homelessness after it happens than to prevent homelessness. When someone becomes homeless, again, it's really hard on their brains and bodies. It often involves them losing their jobs. It strains their ties with their community, because often they'll try to live with other people before they are just homeless. And so that causes interpersonal turmoil and, just like having an eviction on your record, for example, is like ruins your credit. And then you're having to have a harder time finding housing going forward. And, a lot of people will owe money to these landlords. It's an expensive thing to go through and traumatic. And so you want to avoid it if possible, but it's just really hard to know, if you've got 100 people who don't have enough money in the bank to meet all their obligations in a given month, which one of them or which 5, let's say, are going to end up on the streets. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Most of them are going to figure it out somehow, at least this month. But then next month, who's going to end up on the streets? And so any kind of ways that we can prevent homelessness by intervening would be I think really, really have a really high ROI. And that's something that really like bothers me about a lot of policy is that, and I get the impulse, like, don't spend tax dollars, keep government small, whatever. But it's like some interventions save money on net. Mm-hmm. And so why not spend money in the short term to prevent larger expenditures over the long term, especially when those expenditures come with like incalculable like misery and hardship. And so, yeah, I think preventing homelessness is a great way to spend money.
Well, I listened to a podcast, it was an NPR, and I found the article, Los Angeles is using AI to predict. I think they're kind of confusing that with machine learning.
Sure.
But there's this couple, and they get this phone call from, let me scroll down a little bit, from like the city, Los Angeles County. Here's that stat I was telling you about with the ins and outs. But they called them up and basically said, hey, it's not cash, because then that would affect if they're on some sort of subsistence, they can't accept it. So they're like, hey, it's vouchers. But what they're doing is, hey, we can pay this bill or that bill so that therefore, you can meet your rental or whatever it is and not be evicted.
Yeah.
And then interestingly, go into some stats too, that's like, well, not all evictions necessarily lead to homelessness, but these people are like, is this a joke? Like someone from the county just calls you and says, oh yeah, well, we got public record, and that part of that is to be able to have access to be able to pull these records in. Did somebody come into the ER for this? Did somebody come into this center for that? Did you miss yourself? Like, you have to have data, right? And there's nothing for machine learning to do. And so the question is a policy there to allow the city government, whoever, to be able to pull in that data, right? That's where it starts. Same thing. I used to run an insider threat program, and it's all about data to find the bad guys. So now if you flip it around to, hey, it's prevention, right? And if you have data and you set certain targets and tell me when these conditions are true, and we've got a kind of a hard alert type thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I'm curious about the proactive aspect of it. Like, I was speaking to, I forget her name, but the woman who runs Community of Hope, and she was telling me that when she talked to United Way about their like 211 line, their like helpline, she said that like 60% of calls in Huntsville were for housing. Like people either like had lost their housing or were afraid they were going to lose their housing. And so, I mean, if we could just like make sure all of those people, we don't need AI necessarily, but just like what is in place to make sure all of those people don't lose their housing, I think that would be really helpful. Because again, like ER visits, policing, like it's expensive.
Yeah. Can we have some fun real quick?
I'm having a great time. I don't know.
Are you? I want to talk about these.
Fun.
I want to talk about these pictures. These just come from your Instagram, but I'd like to go through times and just say, so what was going on in this picture?
I have no idea.
You don't remember?
I have no. Is there a caption? Is there like a
there
tag?
There was, but
I couldn't tell you if my life depended on it.
Is that Halloween?
I don't think so.
Some sort of helmet?
It's definitely a helmet. I look like I'm in an office chair. I look like I'm in some kind of office. I remember that hoodie. I think that was a DC era hoodie.
Okay.
I don't know.
No recollection.
No.
That means she's taking too many pictures. You remember this one?
I do.
This is in Colorado, I think.
Yeah. My BFF and I were, I think I went to a wedding. Yeah.
what is like spring, or it looks like spring or fall maybe.
Denver area, Boulder, Denver. Yeah.
Okay. Did you eat any pizza while you were there by chance?
I don't remember.
I always like to ask people if they've been to Bojo's Pizza.
I drank beer.
Did you?
I remember that.
Were you drunk here at this picture?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I needed a drink.
Colorado's beautiful.
Yeah, it is very pretty.
All right, the other way. Hold on. Now, your mother sent you something. Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Valentine's. Look at the little sloth. I
She
wore that
sent
sloth
you
shirt.
did she send you the book and the socks and the sweatshirt?
All of it, yeah.
All of it. And that iMac?
No. Not the drugs either.
Oh, man. That's always nice when you get a care package, right?
Yeah.
And then I guess this was like, your caption was, "It's been a day." Like I put on a choker and I put on makeup today, but you don't remember this one either?
I feel like this was maybe like Panny, and that's why I was excited to wear makeup. Though I think that was before Panny. I do remember that choker. I loved that choker. It was very like...
What's Panny, by the way? I don't know what this is.
Pandemic.
Oh, okay. I never heard that before.
Panini. Yeah, I love that choker. I think it was from like Banana Republic, and you don't usually find things that like spicy at Banana Republic.
Yeah.
It's like kind of a fun, like, it's like girly because it's got the flowers and the like the rhinestones, but it's also a choker.
Okay. And then what's going on here?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I was in Big Bear. Big Basin? Big Bear. I don't know. In California. And I was with my boyfriend at the time, I think. Yeah, we were dating. And I ate a decent amount of mushrooms and Molly at the same time. And we just like picked like a little, we had gone on a hike, I think, but I was like, I don't want to hike. So we just sat in this grassy area and just looked at the, like, redwoods. And it was one of those instances where I was just, without any complication or reservation, so grateful to be alive. And it was so beautiful, the trees and nature. I'd been like rolling around in the grass and like laying in the grass. And I remember going to the bathroom at the state park, and it's like these like, middle class people with their kids, and just like sticks in my hair and like very on drugs, and be like, I need to get back to my little grassy area.
How long ago was that?
Oh,
it looks like it's been about a while.
I mean, I've been in Huntsville a year and a half, and this was probably a year before I left.
Okay.
So 2.5 years ago.
I think the glasses make you look even younger.
Yeah. And the pigtails. And the weird pose.
What do those kids say to their parents? "Mommy, what was that? What's that lady doing?" "Oh, I think she just had to go to the bathroom." That's all I had. There we go. Well, any final thoughts? Anything we haven't covered that you really want to get into?
Huntsville needs to legalize naturally affordable, dense housing near jobs and transit. Not only will this eliminate our homelessness, I don't want to say homelessness problem, but not only will it eliminate homelessness, but it will do a whole bunch of other things that are great for the city and for the residents and for the whole country. Mm-hmm. Our pattern of exclusionary zoning is costing the U.S. billions actually, according to Harvard economists, in GDP that we're missing out on because of our land use choices. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for public health. It's bad for, racial segregation. It's bad for income inequality. It's bad for economic mobility. Our patterns of exclusionary zoning are really, really bad, and we don't have to continue making these bad choices. Like, we can do it differently. Other cities are experimenting with it. They're seeing success. Minneapolis loosened its zoning, and they've seen the lowest rate of inflation in the nation, and their rate of rent increases were like much lower than they had been post rezoning. Seattle built a lot of new housing. They saw rents dip. there are examples where it works. If we build a lot more of the kind of housing that people can afford, more people will be able to afford housing, and everybody will be, not everybody, but most people will be better off.
Can you, I was thinking about something while you were talking, sweeps.
Yes.
I mean, I do understand they go through, the city,
Mm-hmm.
and they give some notice, hey, we're going to clear this area out,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to move. How humane is that process? How fair is that process from what you understand?
I mean, it's a devastating, inhumane, unfair, counterproductive process. There's no justification for sweeping homeless encampments whatsoever. So first of all, it's incredibly disruptive. These people are having to move their entire lives, and they don't always get the communication in time. And if they don't get the communication in time, or they can't hire a moving truck, right? Like they have, limited resources. Often they're disabled, right? So they have to figure out how to move. And if they don't figure out how to move, they can lose their mobility devices. They can lose their identification. They can lose their medication. So that's a huge problem for people who are already having health problems, already under-resourced. And as far as where to move, well, A, like where are they supposed to go? And then B, it's incredibly important. I mean, the Surgeon General this year issued his, health advisory, and the topic was loneliness. Loneliness, studies show, is as bad for people as smoking and obesity.
Mm-hmm.
Our social connections are extremely important, and sweeps sever those connections. They say, this community that you've built up, we're going to destroy it. And so that's a huge problem. Maybe they've chosen to camp there because it's near services or relatives or their job or something they need. Like forcing them to live somewhere else is obviously problematic. And for what? What's the benefit? Like, so you have the same number of homeless people who have fewer resources. Some of them have died, according to Love Huntsville, as a result of being swept up.
Really?
And what is the benefit? And it's expensive, and you have to pay officers to do it. So it's like all lose.
Are they justifying it in the sense they just don't want that to be a permanent year-over-year thing? And the sweep is like, okay, well, I was under the impression they were guiding them to a different place. And it was just, kind of like, hey, we'll let this happen for 6 months to a year. But clearly I was, I didn't look into it I think that was just kind of mentioned to me in, some of the episodes, but
no, I don't.
I guess there's not it's like, hey, you're out. Just wherever you go, you go.
I mean, maybe there are like suggestions of like, maybe you could try here, but they're not moving these people. They're not making sure they actually can safely camp in those places that they're suggesting. Like, and they could if they wanted to, but they're choosing not to. And right now they've got a resource officer apparently stationed at the camps. When this resource officer gets to decide like who gets arrested today, who gets kicked out of the camp. Like,
what's the policy like for downtown? You get arrested if you sleep on the street?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think that there's anything stopping police from arresting people for sleeping on the street. I think it's probably, I know in San Francisco it was kind of a matter of like, if you were like a business owner or a homeowner, and you had a good relationship with the police, then maybe the police would like escort the person off of your property. But, it probably is more similar to that downtown, but I don't know. But like, there's a lot of criminalization of homelessness that happens in Huntsville in the United States. And there's really good evidence that it makes the problem worse and not better, because you can't solve homelessness by making it illegal.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how you solve it.
Yeah.
You just make it worse for everyone involved.
Well, I want to give you a guess how long we've been talking.
2 hours.
Hour and 45. It's pretty cool. Does it feel like 2 hours? You tired?
No. I just saw that we had been talking for an hour and a half, and that felt like half an hour ago.
Oh, because you can see the clock too. Yeah. Man, I'd love to. There's so many other topics I found, like, as I was doing research, like, okay, we're not going to go down that. Let's focus on housing tonight. But
I'll come back anytime.
Okay. because there's some I think you've had some, and I'm just going to keep doing, because you're one of those few guests that actually has a ton of things to like. You've been a guest on so many podcasts, and there's just so much good content out there, right, to consume. And that's what I do when I go running and stuff. I listen to things, right? If I'm in the car, I'm doing research. I try to use my time wisely. Although I thought, she's gonna hate me because I probably live in a subdivision. I live in this house. I'm white. Like, I don't know if this is gonna go well.
No. I don't hate the player. I hate the game. I want systems that benefit everyone. It's not about this person versus that person. It's about how do we all win.
Yeah. And the thought I was when I was listening to something today while I was running, not when I listened to something, I realize is so much of, we get so offended at times when people use certain language, and like I try to teach my kids, like I don't really operate on any extreme of the continuum. There's got to be something in between, sure. Right? And we'll use language that's just so, and already like whatever your politics are, whatever's important to you, someone says something and it creates like feeling in you.
Oh yeah.
And I'll give you an example. Listening to this, and sometimes I the older I get, the more I can't stand colleges and universities. It's way too expensive. And it's not necessarily just what they're learning, but I think it's just way too expensive.
For sure.
Right? I paid every nickel of my education, and I actually have issues with like student loan forgiveness. Like, I have to pay for every goddamn, I'd work full time and go to school full time. But like, there was this young lady who, it's just, I take issue at times when people are just academic, right? Hey, you're in school, that's great, but like, there's life to be let you have to live life to some degree. Whether that's whatever your life choices are, there's things you're going to learn, right? You have experiences. And she made this comment. Of course, she's from Maryland, so she was leaning left, and she made this comment that like, if you want to join the cult of home ownership, have at it. I'm like,
oh gosh,
what? And I'm immediately like offended, right? I'm like, I was hot. I was running. I was like, but I get home and I finally was like, let me just look for an alternate definition of cult. And I go, okay, there is a definition where it's like just excessive admiration for something, like just okay, and I softened a little bit, assuming that's what she's saying. It's just kind of like this in the context of, hey, you need to own a home,
right?
But like just the word cult, like it pissed me off, like originally, right? And then I settled down and look into it. But like we just we go to war in our words.
Oh man,
And I actually saw one of the clips was just, or the pictures was like just you posting the picture of your father helping your sister's wife with the gun. Oh my gosh, right? And then the comment police or the comment warriors or assassins come out, and they just go to town, and you probably don't even know, right?
No.
You just basically lobbed a grenade over the wall, and now all these people with gun control or whatever are going ballistic.
Well, it's a great photo because there's something for everyone to hate in it. It's like my sister's wife and my dad teaching her to shoot.
And he's white. No,
and he's white.
No, but you can't control that stuff. But anyway, and I think that I talk a lot about like just the tribalism of like the reason I called it Our Town. I don't know if you know, is like there's a literal and mostly it's figurative, where we draw this town that we belong to just around just about anything. It could be a regional thing that's outside of just the town, but something you're proud of or that you identify with, right? And we are staunch for that, right? And that can change. Just I might be totally in Rob's towns on most things, and then other things we're not. And if we're against each other in kickball, well then now it's my town versus his town. And I don't know, it's just interesting when you look at human behavior. I'd love to just talk to you about like people and the sociology, because that's actually the first thing I look at a lot of stuff. Yeah. Like, who are these people? Where do they come from? What makes them think the way they think? Why do they not do this? There's something there, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, Cathy, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the best. And I hope I'd love to have you back on.
I'd love to come back on. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any final shout outs or any, you want to profess your love to Rob here?
I just want to shout out everyone that I've been speaking to who's taken the time to inform me and alert me and include me and call me in. And I have felt so optimistic since getting involved about Huntsville and about my ability to do some good and have fun and make friends. And so, yeah, if we're in conversation in any way, I just want to thank you. And obviously, I couldn't have done most of what I've done without Rob. And I want to thank you for having me on and asking me amazing questions and caring about our city.
Thanks for reaching out. You're one of those that reached out, and I love that. And I always love it when it's like a topic we've not explored at this kind of, from this dimension, these angles, this depth.
Totally.
And by the way, I always go to the gas station across the street from your office to get my Diet Cokes.
This is a strong guess. I've played Frogger between like running across governors too many times.
Do you like Bandito burrito?
I grew up here, and I don't think
You've
I've
never
ever been.
I love it, but their heartburn slogan is legit. Like,
Yeah.
I regret it so much.
It's listed in the top. I just saw a thing. There's the 21 best restaurants across Alabama, and then regionally, North Alabama, it was like in the top 10.
Wow.
It is delicious.
Yeah.
But it will give you terrible heartburn.
And those are some cool people that work there.
Oh, yeah.
You'd think on the surface, like, oh, it's gonna be like a Mexican restaurant. No. You feel like you're like at a boardwalk, beach, cafe type thing. And the one lady's got a different color hair every day. I don't know if you've been in there, but it's like, whoa, okay.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
It's got some really cool vibes.
Yeah. All right, Cathy. Well, thank you so much. Until next time.
Thanks for having me, Troy.
And all the best.
Thank you.